back. This is Dr. Haider, and I'm here with Stefan Hartmann. Stefan, thank you so much for joining us today. Can you hear me okay?
Hey,
Yeah.
thanks for having me.
Yep, absolutely. It's a real pleasure.
Coming loud and clear.
So I'm just going to do a brief intro. So, I know that you're a German-American national raised in a home with a lot of holistic approaches to healing. Chinese medicine, Tai Chi were mainstays while you were growing up. And amazingly enough, you've never had an antibiotic. I envy you. And we're not vaccinated until you had to go to university. That's amazing. And then you trained in competitive tennis since the age of 7, competed for 8 years in European junior circuits, then moved to Florida at 15 and continued on the USTA junior and men's pro circuit. You've been a tennis coach since age 15 and coached 3 high school tennis teams. And so you graduated magna cum laude with a bachelor's in sports and exercise science in 2015, and then worked full-time in the ER before and after that, and also as a master trainer at LA Fitness. And you completed the physician assistant program at Bay Path University in 2018. And since then, you've worked in a number of different specialties: urgent care, internal medicine, spine surgery, interventional pain management, family medicine, psychiatry. So a lot of great experience and an amazing background. And I know that you've started now a direct primary care practice, which is at, I think, irondpc.com. Is that right?
Yes.
All right, great. So tell us a bit about your experience with long haulers, and then if you have a presentation, we can bring that up also. Yeah. If you want to start with the presentation, is that what you want to do? Okay. All right, Cheryl, we can bring that up then.
If I can share screen here. Here we go. I got it. Yeah. So let's go through this here. What I've seen in practice is that it's N of 1, really. So each patient, they present to me either vaccine injury or a long haul from wild type. And I've coined kind of the term here, long haul vaccine and wild type, because the disease process is similar. It's a lot of inflammation. But what brings them to me in the first place, I can sometimes pinpoint an underlying reason, maybe why they got into this hyperinflammation state, or maybe accelerate or activation of their underlying disease process. So we kind of know some of the epidemiology of this, right? We all know about the insulin resistance, the metabolic dysfunction, the high obesity. These patients, they do worse from COVID. But I've also found that there's other reasons, anxiety, stress. These are highly inflammatory disease states. Patients that have hormonal dysfunction, right? Maybe they're elderly, or for some reason or another, their hormones are depleted. And patients who have a lack of nutrients in their diet, specifically patients who are maybe high endurance runners, so they're depleting their glutathione, or vegetarians, so they have low NAD status at baseline. And that's going to be a huge part of my discussion here. It's NAD. And then there's other patients that have chronic stealth infections or gut dysbiosis, maybe even parasitic infections, as we'll see. And then there's patients with low hormone status and this. There's some labs that you can get into, some higher end inflammatory labs if you're looking at this, but I found they're fun to look at, but they don't help so much. These patients are highly inflamed. You can check a D-dimer, you can see this. You can check a CRP, you can often see this, or you can get a pulse test. A lower muscle mass and a higher fat will have at baseline higher inflammation. We know this. This is the main reason most people are ill in the US, right? Metabolic dysfunction, high fat, high visceral fat, low muscle mass. And so a lot of my practice is coaching patients the ancestral diet and teaching them the principles of exercise science. We know if you have a higher muscle mass, you are more resistant to pretty much all diseases as we know them. So optimizing this is critical, and avoiding the things that cause inflammation. Teaching my patients to avoid these seed oils, these processed vegetable oils that are in everything. Right? We know they increase inflammation. Why would you want to put this into a patient who's already highly inflamed, either vaccine injury or long haul COVID? So reducing the amount of inflammation that they're consuming in the diet, and then getting the real nutrients into the diet. We'll talk about some other lifestyle factors before we dive into the nutrients more. Sauna is absolutely fantastic towards detoxing these patients, getting rid of some of perhaps heavy metal toxicities that they've accumulated over the years that's precipitating to their inflammation. We know it eliminates toxins. One of my favorite meth cops study. Have you heard about this one, Dr. Sater?
No.
Meth cop study was done on police officers who were intoxicated by methamphetamines. And these patients had a lot of kind of an overlap of symptoms that we see in long hauler, right? Fatigue, pain, general poor health, and so forth, brain fog. These patients all improved with sauna therapy, this detox. Cryotherapy here is also a fantastic and cheap modality that patients can access pretty much anywhere. Everyone has a bathtub and access to 7-Eleven ice. Water bath, Wim Hof has made this famous on YouTube. It's fantastic for lowering inflammation, right? These same inflammatory cytokines, the TNF alpha that we see elevated in these patients, we can reduce it with whole body cryotherapy. And then we have some colleagues are using statins. Some statins are anti-inflammatory, perhaps because they improve lipid panels, but again, whole body cryotherapy can improve these lipid particles as much as cryotherapy, and perhaps even better, specifically if you look at HDL. Let's talk a little bit more about nutrition. I think Dr. Vitamin A, and I really enjoyed listening to him speak about that because it's fantastic. It's an antioxidant. And I also heard Dr. Masterdon mention it's found in beef liver. Yes, it is. So I teach my patients about consuming the ancestral diet and getting back in these things that are on. And the reason, again, why I like the ancestral diet so much is because when you work with a patient who's injured, their supplement list is like this long. You've seen them.
Yeah.
And if you can get it back in naturally to the diet, you can simplify their life. They don't have to take 20 different things. And if you do ancestral diet, natural omega-3s from this, right? Zinc, your vitamin D, vitamin K, all these things that you could take 100 different pills for. And there's good liver pate recipes. Oftentimes patients will flinch when I tell them this, but yeah, you can make a liver pate recipe. We've seen this in my clinical practice, just improving overall health of patients with chronic viral illnesses, but also specifically in the long hauler patient. We know zinc is fantastic. Again, I don't recommend eating zinc by itself because a lot of these patients, it'll sit poorly in their stomach. There's another fantastic one. Again, you can find it in beef heart. One thing to note is the content of CoQ10 is much higher in the raw beef heart. So again, patients often look at me funny when I suggest this, but you can chop it up very, very fine. You can dip it in your favorite, you can swallow it whole. Again, it's basically a multivitamin in a natural form. It's affordable and it's pretty well tolerated. Collagen peptides are also fantastic. We know we can get a lot of healing factors out of this, and it's easy to add on to your coffee in the morning. Coffee tastes even better. Kefir, I was just drinking some kefir here. It is absolutely fantastic towards improving the immune system and improving the microbiome balance, and again, reducing inflammation, IL-6, NF-kappa B, all these things that we'll hear in these lectures here by all these experts that you can measure with when we're implementing the ancestral diet, implementing raw kefir, all these things, these nutritional enzymes that found in these biological ingredients found in meat sources, you're going to get it. And you don't have to buy expensive supplements for this. Lactoferrin, a fat enzyme that is pretty much absent in the diet of most of the planet on a pasteurized milk diet. It's inactivated by the pasteurization process along with about 50 other life-giving enzymes. So if we add this back into the diet that many patients are lacking, we can see a reduction in inflammation. Like for both antiviral activity, but if you look into the literature, it has anti-cancer activity, it improves the immune system. And sure, you can supplement with lactoferrin. It's a bit expensive. It's like $40 a bottle, but you can get it from unpasteurized milk. We'll talk a little bit about ivermectin here. It's not my main focus. We all know what ivermectin does. It reduces inflammation primarily. Okay, that's probably why patients are good on it. It does have some antiviral properties as well. In clinical practice, I find that ivermectin, these two have been absolutely critical for most of my long hauler patients, both the vaccine injury and the wild type. They've been absolute game changers. So these are the two. I'll put most patients on these to start right off the bat when they come to me. Steroids, I use them sparingly because a lot of patients don't tolerate them. They have a lot of side effects. But for some patients, they really need them. They're in a lot of pain and they suffer hives, urticaria, you name it. Hydroxychloroquine, I also will use this long-term for patients with the long hauler vaccine wild type. Again, it's anti-inflammatory. We use eating animal liver, so beef liver. It has cysteine and in there, collagen peptide as well, cysteine, glycine, the building N-acetylcysteine, which is the precursor to glutathione. We all know that helps support the detoxification process in the liver. All these patients, they need detoxification. We use sauna. They need to improve their detoxification pathways. And then there is, when we have high inflammation, we have to think about clot formation and preventing clots in patients. One case example I have of a patient who came to me kind of chronically fatigued at baseline, actually had COVID at the time he had care with me. We sent elevated D-dimer. And I'm seeing this routinely now, and both in the chronically injured vaccine and wild type, but also patients in acute COVID, the elevated D-dimer. And we all know what that means, possibly high clot risk, right? Get me on a nattokinase, we put them on aspirin, we put them on a couple other items, glutathione, and we saw pretty much over the course of 2 months a resolution of his D-dimer levels. We saw his testosterone improve. This guy, he had very low testosterone at baseline, 147 total, free of 2.6. So he was kind of fatigued, kind of miserable, and it put him into this hyperinflammatory state. So that the wild type COVID, he was not a healthy person to begin with. He had more fat mass. He had impaired fasting insulin. I think that was somewhere around here. His fasting insulin was 18.2. And it's really changed his diet, basically. He was eating way too much fructose throughout the day. He had no idea the damage he was doing to himself. So this is someone who could have ended up in long hauler, but we corrected it relatively quickly, and he's doing very well. Talk a little bit about antiplatelets, anticoagulants, nattokinase. I don't know if you have this in your stack, Dr. Haider. I'm not sure. Do you have this in your stack?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's one of the most important. Yeah.
It's so fantastic. I love it. It's very well tolerated too. Have you found?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, really no side effects, unlike aspirin and some of these other ones that can sit badly in the stomach. Therapeutic is another one. Have you ever used that one?
Yeah, I'm using both those now a lot, and almost everyone.
Yeah, they're fantastic. I love these. Rosuvastatin, I guess this is less tolerated. I don't like it to use statins, but if I'm going to choose one, I'm going to use rosuvastatin. And the reason for that is it lowers CRP levels. It lowers inflammation, right? Maybe it lowers cholesterol, right? And maybe that the main benefit of rosuvastatin is the CRP, and that should be the main marker to watch for in these patients. Talk a little bit of statins here. Quercetin, this is a patient case here. She's a 45-year-old lawyer who she was coming to me for these angioedema, these urticaria, this hive stuff, and she is someone as a blend vaccine injury. She got the vaccine. She thought she was okay, and then she got COVID. And I think she had a hyperimmune response to the wild type COVID. So it sent her into the ER for angioedema all the time, and she was suffering with these painful hives for months. So yeah, we put her on prednisone for a while. We put her on quercetin. She even got on cromolyn. She's doing quite well at this time. It seemed to have cleared out of her system. She's still using hydroxychloroquine daily and has found that to be very helpful. Urticaria related to certain foods. Melatonin, we like this one because it's an antioxidant, but I recommend testing for patients with low melatonin in the first place. And I'll show you later some testing that we can do for this. Let's talk a little bit about NAD here. NAD is found in all our mitochondria, right? We learn about this in school and then forget about it, right? But I'm actually using this in clinical practice. I love NAD. I'll use it even for athletic performance, right? For tennis tournaments and so forth. But I found specifically that the long hauler patient suffers with baseline low NAD status. And then they encounter something leads them further of NAD. We use up NAD to fight viral infections. So we can supplement patients with NAD. One, through nutrition, right? It was known through history as pellagra. We see pellagra has a lot of overlap. You can get NAD from food, red meat, the ancestral diet being the highest quality source of NAD on the planet. Chicken a little bit less, fish a little bit less. Plant-based sources are very low in NAD, so we prefer not to use plant-based sources for NAD. Sure, people might think they're getting protein, they're hitting hitting my macronutrients, but are you hitting the right quality of NAD and B vitamins? Probably not. So here are kind of the common sources you can get NAD from. Obviously, I prefer red meats in the ancestral diet, but I found that some of my patients need NAD injections. And we'll see a case later on that. Fluvoxamine. So I know some people are using this one, It's an antidepressant. The precursors for fluvoxamine, or the precursors that should be in the place of fluvoxamine, are serotonin, and the precursor for that is tryptophan and NAD. So again, looking at the precursors, we maybe understand why some patients, some antidepressant modalities out there. We all know about glutathione, the body's antioxidant. I think a lot of patients who suffer with long COVID are depleted in glutathione in the first place. So we use the supplementation of glutathione for them. We make sure they get through the precursors, cysteine and glycine. Vitamin D and K2, we know to keep levels above 60, preferably if we can get sunlight. A lot of these patients, I find their vitamin D levels are very low. No one's getting enough sunlight. No one's getting it through the diet, so they may need supplementation. I've been using peptide therapies as well in some cases, thymosin alpha-1. You heard about this?
Yeah, I just learned about this from Dr. Yusuf Salibi. He's one of the people who spoke at the FLCCC conference last month in Florida. I have not used peptides myself. Yeah. He also mentioned a number of peptides. If you have a good source of like how to get educated on peptides and how to use them, was this one I thought he said that this one was like banned by the FDA or something. Do you know anything about that?
I mean, peptides are a gray area of medicine, of course, but no, not bad.
No, just this one, this particular one.
I found it quite. Thymosin alpha band. Well, I wouldn't be surprised. It can be quite a game changer for certain patients suffering with chronically weak immune systems from reactivated viruses. I had this one patient chronically virus. We did all these things for her. Thymosin alpha-1 was probably the biggest difference we've ever made. I mean, we did low-dose check this stuff. It was TA1. She enjoyed that. And I had this other guy, middle-aged, kind of anxious type of personality. And he got on Thymosin alpha-1. He acted himself. I didn't even prescribe it to him. He just got on it. And it resolved his ground glass opacities in the lung. We saw them resolve in a patient. He's currently doing another protocol of it. because he enjoyed it so much.
So how do you think of thymosin alpha 1? Is it just like, I mean, what triggers in your mind that maybe I'll try this? Is it just, do you think of it as like stimulating the immune system to heal the body? I mean, what is the kind of like your understanding of what it does in the body and what the indications would be for using it?
It comes back to, again, the ancestral diet. So it's a peptide produced by the thymus gland. I mean, potentially you could eat enough bovine thymus to get these immune peptides back in the body. You know, it's similar to the way BPC 157 works. Again, actually, it's found in cow stomach. It's found in tripe. So a lot of these peptides, they're naturally found in animal products and the human body. So there's that old theory of like heals like. A lot of naturopaths talk about that. And I think there's real support and evidence for that, specifically now that we're seeing these peptides. And you can get it synthesized in a very efficient and therapeutic product, deliver it to the body subcutaneously, and you can see rapid resolution in symptoms and health. And I think it's with these peptide therapies and understanding kind of ancestral nutrition or ancestral healing functions.
That's amazing. I actually didn't know that, or I'd forgotten it, but thank you so much for mentioning, that these, in an ancestral diet, you would have gotten, these specifically from certain organ meats, which many of our ancestors ate and prized, greatly prized them.
The most prized parts of the animals, and they're coming back into style, and maybe the ancestral diet, if we can convince enough people to eat beef heart. Another huge part is healing stealth infections and healing the gut. And a lot of these patients, they come with broken down guts from eating the standard American diet. So and taking, antibiotics and biofilms in the gut. And we know these lipopolysaccharides, they cause a lot of inflammation. And the gut contains most of our immune system. So we have to heal this. And we have to try to fix this for people. And we know antibiotics don't work, they make it worse. The way I like to start patients out is kind of like a healing protocol. I use biocidin. And then we add on collagen peptides, again, getting back in those nutrients. Bovine colostrum, I find, is fantastic for healing gut barrier dysfunction. And then also, again, BPC 157, which, as I described, you find that naturally in bovine tripe, so cow stomach and cow intestine. But any questions about that?
No, but that's really fascinating. Can you just double click on the biocidin? What is biocidin, and why were you?
Biocidin is a botanical research company. Basically, it's Chinese medicine herbalized in a pharmaceutical grade product, so you know what you're getting. And they're very effective at removing bacterial biomes. They have a lot of research to support this. Yeah. Another part is identifying underlying infections like parasitical infections. And I have here a bit of my full moon protocol, which we'll see was very important. So here's a couple of cases to discuss. One we're going to talk about first is a young vaccine. Second is a black male, vax and wild type mix, elderly female, and a couple others. So this is the vaccine injured nurse, right? She came to me, brain fog, legs weakness, POTS, red ears, tremors, hydroxychloroquine, low dose naltrexone. She was on prednisone. I mean, she was on it all. And she was doing okay. Low dose naltrexone is probably the biggest thing that helped her, along with hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin. But she was still, not well. She went on her own and she started using fenbendazole around the full moon cycles, and she was getting herxing from this. Herxing reaction. You feel uncomfortable, itchy, joint aches, headaches, and she added on biocidin cleanse in her stool, and we saw it again. She did it every day. She did ozone therapy. So every time she did something that was a cleanse of nature, she'd start passing this thing that is negative, right? But she still passes these things, and she herxes like crazy every time. And she's now 2 years into this vaccine injury. Her spike protein is still 2,500. And we're still kind of at a loss of what's going on with this poor girl. And she keeps passing these things and herxing every time. I think she's living with underlying parasitical infection. The vaccine was just kind of pushed her over the edge and made them surface. Who knows? But my point is that you can put patients on protocols, but you still have to kind of figure out the underlying reason of why they're suffering so much. N of 1, I like to call it. We're currently having mucin alpha 1 and VPC 157, and another round of biocidin because she went out and used doxycycline on her own and gave herself chronic yeast overgrowth.
How did you just do like a standard test for fungus, or like the stool testing that you can get like a stool culture and ova and parasite? It's not like you sent it off.
Those stuff they're always negative anyway. I've never seen one come back positive. We should probably.
Yeah, me neither. I've run a bunch of them in the U.S. They're always negative in the U.S. But do you ever use like Genova Diagnostics or something, comprehensive stool panels or something?
Yes, I do Genova Diagnostics, and that probably would be the better way to go. I mean, obviously, you want to use the tests that are available because this patient maxed out her deductible anyway, but they don't detect it, and Genova's expensive.
Right.
Let's talk about this African American male. He's 58, and he got 2 shots of Moderna. He didn't notice anything, and then 7 months after the second shot, he got sick with COVID, and he developed debilitating long haul, GERD, fatigue, brain fog, dizziness, constipation, neck pain, headaches. Pretty much can't work because he's so fatigued. He came to me with pretty low testosterone, free of 5.6 and a total of 233. And so what we did for this guy is we got him on TRT, and we started doing NAD injections 3 times a week. And he's found this critical. If he runs out of these, he's fatigued in bed again. So what happened with this guy, I think, is he was low testosterone in the first place. He had a fatter belly, so he had a hyper-inflammatory response to getting COVID, maybe because Moderna set him up for this. But regardless, his testosterone was low and his NAD was low, and we just gave these back to him, and he's doing better. We did place him on rosuvastatin because he just has such high cardiovascular risk factors. I mean, his LDL particle numbers off the charts, 3,300, probably one of the highest ones I've seen. Triglycerides pretty high too. We're trying to get him to eat more ancestrally appropriate foods, eliminating a lot of the processed carbs and so forth that contribute to high triglycerides. We talked about using CoQ10 in the form of raw beef heart because statins deplete this. His inflammatory markers have been improving. His vitamin D is improving. We got him on a liposomal product. Even his IGF-1 seems to be improving. We didn't even use any peptides for that. We tried optimizing his thyroid function with NP thyroid because he was still really fatigued in bed. But once we got the dose right of NAD, he needed to get about 200 milligrams subcutaneously 3 times a week to start feeling energetic again. So as we'll see in the next patient, this lady, she came to me, and she's going to be a thyroid case. So she came to me because her thyroid was low. Then she called me next day positive for COVID. We treated her with the FLCCC protocol. Didn't work. Maybe I underdosed ivermectin. Who knows? But she's laid in bed. She can't work. So she's now long hauler. We do the thyroid panel on her. She's got really low T3. And she was going to conventional doctors. She get normal TSH. That's what they measure. And they said, you're fine. So maybe COVID made her T3 worse. Who knows? But she was bedridden. This lady could not work. She could not support her children because she was so fatigued. So we put her on T3. We do a bit of biocidin protocol. She actually lost 16 pounds, which she was pretty happy about from the biocidin. We got her some electrolytes back in the body, the element electrolytes, which were very helpful. And we started with NAD and NP thyroid. Now for her, the NAD was like, whatever. It didn't really help her, unlike the last guy. The NP thyroid, unlike the last guy, was like game changer for her. And now this lady, her thyroid's coming up slowly, feeling a little bit better. We finally got it up to 2.8, figured out the right dose. This lady is back to work, supporting her family again. She feels great. So again, the point is an N of 1. What worked for one patient that we saw in the last case Didn't work for this lady. She's improved about 90% at this point. I saw her the other day at work. Here's an interesting one. This is an 80-year-old female. Her chief complaint was headache. She was actually referred to me by her physical therapist. So this lady, she got a vaccine, and pretty much within that day, she got symptoms of a TIA, went to the ER. They said everything was normal, but she's now in chronic pain from the neck. So the physical therapist referred her to me because he didn't know what to do with this poor lady, and he knew I do kind of voodoo. So I see this lady, and I sent her MRI to the neurosurgeon I used to work for, this spine surgeon. I said, "Can you look at this?" And he's like, "Who read this MRI normal?" He's like, "Her brain is showered with micro clots. It's a sign of ischemic strokes." He says, "What happened to this lady? This makes no sense." And he started doing epidurals for her, trying to treat her pain. She's just not getting better. So I do the salivary hormone panel on her. And she has a flatline cortisol, right? The cortisol graph shooting down here up in the morning, but she has no cortisol. And her hormones are depleted as well. No testosterone, no melatonin, no estradiol, no progesterone, as can be expected in an older lady, but maybe not so bad, right? Maybe you should have some melatonin left. Maybe you should have some testosterone left. The conventional wisdom is they're old. They don't need hormones. Let them be. What do they need? But she was faced with spine surgery. The surgeon, her neck pain, her headaches were so bad. He's like, "Well, it might be from your neck. Let's do a fusion." So we want to do a fusion in an 80-year-old? No, we don't want to do that. Do we want to give her corticosteroids? No, we don't want to do that. So what we did, we put her on synapsin, which is actually intranasal NAD, ginseng, and B12. Mm-hmm. We put her on probiotic, tryptophan, L-theanine, thymus protein extract, adrenal. Basically, it's an adrenal extract as well, and plus cortisol comes to it. There's adaptogenic herbs, and then we put her on testosterone, estrogen, pregnenolone, and oral progesterone. DHEA, I told her to take DHEA, but she didn't actually take that. We put her on low-dose naltrexone. We put her on melatonin. She told me first her knee pain improved. She says, "Hey, I can walk now. I thought I just had to live with knee pain because I'm old." Well, no, maybe you were low in hormones like estrogen. And she also noticed that she didn't have hot flashes anymore, which is kind of odd for an 80-year-old to be having hot flashes. So she was starting to feel better. And we talked about using Samax and Salank, which is another peptide developed by Russian researchers to treat cerebrovascular injury over there. And lo and behold, this is her salivary hormone panel. So her cortisol has come up naturally again, high, and it's come up through the day. And I think this was a combination of the bovine adrenal extract and pregnenolone is how this happened. We can see her testosterone came up with hormone replacement. She's not taking DHEA, as I said. She forgot to do that. Her melatonin is still a little bit underdosed. She actually, when I called her the other day, she said she had forgotten to take some of the melatonin. And then when she started taking it, she felt better again. So don't forget to take your melatonin. We told her to back off a little bit on the pregnenolone since her cortisol came back so great. She still has headaches on and off, but she's good enough where she doesn't need fusion surgery anymore. She likes the estrogen. She noticed that the Samax-Salank peptide, this intranasal peptide, it helped break some of the brain fogginess. Some of these patients describe this brain fogginess, but for her, I think it's because of these little clots in her brain that she got. And now we're trialing oxytocin for her. We're going to see how she does on that. Let's see.
How do you dose the oxytocin?
10 units BID. That's a good starting dose.
And that's intranasal, you said?
Yeah, intranasal. Mm-hmm.
Is the indication for you tinnitus, or do you use it in other places for long?
So yeah, interestingly enough, we'll see a case where that cures tinnitus. But for her, it's difficult to measure oxytocin, but it modulates pain. So this lady, she's still experiencing pain, the headache. So I'm hoping that this can help with her pain a little bit. let's see. This is a patient 1 month post-COVID. Oh, yeah, this lady, yeah. So this lady, she came with me, anosmia, extreme fatigue, brain fog, anosmia. Basically, for her, the game changer was synapsin. And again, that's intranasal NAD and B vitamins. So not too crazy, just some NAD is what helped her. This guy's a bad case. 50-year-old diabetic. He was on a vent for 3 months for COVID, had a CVA. He's paralyzed, chronic pain, insulin-dependent diabetic for 20 years, glucose 300 to 400. So he came to me to continue LDN, which he somehow got somewhere. What I told him is like, let's do a low carbohydrate, higher fat diet. Let's try oxytocin, BPC 157, and let's do some lab work. So what do we see? In the lab work, no testosterone, right? Testosterone of 95 and a free of 4.1, really, really bad. He's had chronically elevated white blood cells and neutrophils, monocytes, and eosinophils. And then he's gotten the multi-million-dollar workup. No one knows why this is happening to this guy. Interesting enough, on 2 days of oxytocin, his blood sugar dropped down to like 60s and 80s, and his
what's going on there? Do you know what's going on there?
I have no idea what's going on there. Maybe a combination of the low carb diet and oxytocin, because that's really the only two things we did. And then his tinnitus resolved by 90%, which was quite incredible. Right now, he's hovering blood sugars about 150s, which, half of what he was at. So maybe we need to increase the dose of oxytocin. We'll see there. This guy lives in high inflammation, CRP 49, SED rate 79. Yeah, this guy's in pretty bad shape. He feels like his inflammation, it comes back the third day after glutathione injection. So we're doing intramuscular glutathione, and it's helping him with this inflammation. So he's needing lots of support in his antioxidant pathways. His pains are doing better. His testosterone is bringing up his mood and his energy. And he's even thinking about getting off the Wellbutrin. And if he does this, we can use methylene blue, because there's some contraindication with using methylene blue with antidepressants like that. So yeah, his TRT, his testosterone was low, and possibly that's antidepressants because his mood was low. So yeah, that's all I have there. But really, the point is N of 1, right? Everyone's unique.
Yeah, I tell patients this a lot because a lot of them ask, I have tinnitus. What should I take for tinnitus? I have this. What should I take for this? Right? And it's just like, I almost never have a straight answer for them. Right? That I found one particular thing works for, a particular symptom in anyone. So I'll go ahead and turn this off. So we'll just jump into the Q&A. I think I'll get it started.